scary story from Mars. The wind is never really silent, is it? Don did not like Mars. He was a fire control officer, keen-eyed and built for hazard detection. Back on Earth, he had become accustomed to radar locks and missile alerts. Out there, all he had was the solitude of rock and dust, which crept beneath his skin. Others termed it nerves. Nick, the meathead powerlifter, smiled and claimed he simply needed more coffee. He practiced radar and sonar before the trip, and he used every console like a gym bench, flexing before each shift. Eric, the reliable engineer, urged him not to jump at the shadows. Eric was the type of person who could use duct tape and loyalty to keep a ship or a friendship together. Even Matt, who is loud, arrogant, and always ready with a joke, smiled when Dawn remarked that the wind sounded strange, as if it carried whispers when scraping against the hull. Jordan, the E.T., who was normally quiet and methodical, simply smirked at the situation and continued working on his calibrations. Matt stopped laughing when it said his name. It began on day 12. Don squatted alone at the sensor relay, red dust adhering to his suit's seams. The storm 2 nights before had knocked off the uplink, and now he worked with hands that seemed heavier than they should, scraping grit from the antenna's insides. Each movement echoed inside his helmet, and the faint hiss of his oxygen feed was the only indication that he was still alive. The others remained within the habitat. He could see them there. Nick hammering weights against the bulkhead for the 100th time. Matt shouting jokes too loud for the recycled air. Eric fiddling with systems till they purred again. And Jordan's calm gaze on every flickering console. They were together. He was alone. And that appeared to be the way things always ended. The quiet pressed down on him, heavier than the thin Martian air. It reminded him of his long night watches in the Navy, operating the close-in weapon system with the radar sweep circling ceaselessly while everyone else slept. At least, there was a sea, and the horizon was alive with action. There was nothing here, just a world that wished to bury them in its never-ending dust. His thoughts deceived him, as they often do when he is left in silence. He remembered his wife's last message before he left, in which she expressed her displeasure with the way the girls sobbed at night when he wasn't present. He remembered his daughters, the smallest of whom was just 4 years old, clinging to his uniform sleeve at the transportation center, imploring him not to leave. Their features tormented him throughout the silent hours, as did the way they pressed their sketches into his hand like talismans. The ridge remains stationary. The horizon is vacant. The world held its breath. Then it arrived. Dawn, soft, drawn out, almost friendly. He froze. For a moment, he thought it was his wife's voice rather than the communications being fed to him. The voice called his name in the same way she did after the girls had gone to bed, low and exhausted, yet warm. The recollection was so vivid that he could almost hear the rustle of bed sheets and the faint patter of small feet in the hallway. He turned, but there was nothing, only red dust and stone. He swallowed. "Say again?" "You heard me. I miss you." His chest constricted. That was what his oldest daughter had written at the bottom of her last drawing, which had stick figures of the family and him in uniform, scrawled in purple crayon. "I miss you, Daddy." Nobody else could have known that. Nobody else should know. Don's stomach lurched. He snatched his headset off, the communication wire twisting against his suit as his breath fogged the visor. He sprinted for the rover, his feet sinking deep into the dust, as if the ground itself was attempting to hold him back. Day 13. Nick was the mission's strongest man, and he made sure that everyone knew it. Lunch every day began with a ritual. One scoop of bucked up thrown into his shaker, the neon powder hissing as it dissolved, the liquid gleaming strangely under the habitat lights. He'd slam it down, veins throbbing, then turn up his speakers to the maximum. Corn, Slipknot, and disturbed guttural riffs and hammering percussion echoed through the thin walls. The others complained, but Nick just smirked and nodded. His bunk was covered in resistance bands and homemade weights soldered together from spare parts. He lived in tank tops, even when the habitat's air recyclers caused the modules to freeze. He considered sleeves to be a waste of cloth. He preferred to show off his tattoos. His favorite was unique, a full-color mermaid wrapped around his arm. The ink was ancient and faded, but you could clearly see her flowing hair, reaching hands, and tail coiled down to his elbow. Half drunk, half in love with a sailor's legend. "She keeps me from drowning," he'd quip. If he wasn't on watch or performing radar diagnostics, he was curling, grunting, or challenging Matt to another arm wrestling match. "Can't fight Mars with jokes," he'd say, smirking, sweat shining in the low light of the habitat. "You fight it with strength," but the storms were unconcerned about intensity. On day 13, when he was sleeping, the voice first reached him. "Nick." He shifted in his bunk, his chest rising with the deep rhythm of a man used to pushing iron until it burned. At first, he assumed it was a dream. His former coach, perhaps, or his father, hollering from the sidelines. Familiar tones, buried in memory. However, the voice did not bark encouragement. "You are feeble." Nick's brow wrinkled, even while sleeping. His hands flexed against the sheet. "You are not enough. You never were. Look at yourself chasing muscle because you know you're hollow within." He sprang awake, heart pounding and sweat slicking his brow. The dormitory was silent. Dawn was still on edge. Eric snored quietly in the next rack. Matt rolled over, muttering in his sleep. Jordan typed softly onto a datapad. Nothing strange, except that the voice had not stopped. It was still there, creeping around the boundaries of his mind. "You lift and lift and lift, but I know what breaks you." Nick looked down, and for a split second, he thought his tattoo was moving. Her eyes were wide now, and her red hair writhed as if it was floating underwater. Her lips curled in a smile that he couldn't recall the artist painting. He jerked his arm into the darkness, muttering to himself, but the image remained. The mermaid's mouth moved, and he understood what she had said. "Drown." Nick slapped his palms over his ears, as if he could crush the voice out of his skull. But it was not coming from the room. It was coming from within him. Day 14. Matt was the type of person who could make a tomb chuckle. He filled Mars's dead air with a running commentary, which was loud, brash, and full of one-liners. If the storm jolted the habitat, he'd smile and remark, "Don't worry, boys, it's just Mars trying to fart us out." Humor was his armor, his shield. He stopped everyone else's nerves from fraying by using his own as fuel. Most nights, it worked. The others didn't say it out, but they all knew Matt was a living war hero. He'd escaped shrapnel that should have killed him, a living legend. He never spoke of it, but everyone admired him. Then there was the drinking. On Earth, he was never without a glass in his hand, whether it was whiskey, beer, or something that burned. Out here, he kept the modest stash of illegal bottles he'd snuck inside his footlocker. He'd pour a bit each night, raising his tin cup in a toast to the red horizon. "Mars can kill me tomorrow," he'd joke, "but tonight I drink first." But Mars has a way of achieving stillness. On day 14, he stood vigil at the western viewport, watching the storm wall. The red haze boiled like a live ocean, with waves cresting in dust rather than water. Matt leaned against the railing, half asleep and half bored, making jokes to himself. Then the storm moved, not with the normal randomness, not with the turmoil he had been accustomed to. It folded back like a curtain, and he swore he saw faces in the dust. There are plenty of them, mouths open, eyes hollow. Everyone leaned against the window like drowning people desperate for air. Matt blinks and rubs his eyes. He looked again, and there was nothing. "All right, Mars," he responded with a weak laugh. "You've got me. Nice trick." That's when the singing started. Low, distant. At first, there were no words, only an off-key tune that set his teeth on edge. He leaned closer to the viewport. The tune became more focused. It was a happy birthday. Matt stumbled back. His birthday was 3 months away. Nobody on Mars knew the date. Matt. The voice blended into the melody like oil in water. "Don't pretend. I know when the candles go out." His throat clenched. For the first time in years, he wanted a drink, not to laugh or celebrate, but to shut out the noise. The viewport was fogged with his own breath as he looked into the storm, wide-eyed and with a thumping pulse. Matt was without a joke for the first time since landing. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Let's pause here for just a moment, because this is the point where the jokes stop. Matt has faced war, storms, and the vacuum of space. But whatever is waiting for him out there in that red haze has finally taken his voice. Take a breath. Let that image sit with you. When we come back, the storm won't just be watching anymore. Be on the lookout for Part 2, where we complete this journey and discover who or what was whispering in the storm.